Welcome to your daily dose of sci-fi adventures. New stories dropped every single day. Smash that subscribe button and ring the to help us reach 1,000 subscribers and unlock even more epic cosmic tales. The Starliner Astrea drifted like a wounded leviathan on the fringes of the Veil Nebula, its once pristine white hull pockmarked by cosmic dust and scorched by the ultraviolet glow of nearby pulsars. Through the panoramic viewports, the nebula's swirling tendrils of emerald and amethyst light stretched onward into infinity, a breathtaking tableau marred only by the sight of the commissure rift yawning ahead, a yawning chasm of blackness, so deep that light itself seemed afraid to cross its threshold. Inside the command deck, Captain Liana Kor stood rigid at the central holomap, her palms pressed flat against the cool glass projection table. Every pulsar eclipse data point flickered in ominous red. Primary thrusters offline, secondary rays at critical heat, navigation gyros failing. She'd flown this route a dozen times, cargo runs between the core worlds and the fringe colonies, and had never before seen systems degrade so catastrophically, so suddenly. "We're overloading the ventral plasma banks," intoned Lieutenant Soren, the helmsman whose usual serenity was now tempered by dread. His fingers flew across the nav console, wrestling stability equations into submission. "If we don't redistribute power now, the whole drive core could shear in half." Captain Kor's blue eyes narrowed. "Patch in emergency channels to engineering. I want real-time status and a contingency plan within 5 minutes." A hush fell over the deck as the order rippled through the comm network. Crew members, once confident, crisp in their discipline, now exchanged anxious glances. Shuttle pilots scrolled through docking protocols, sensor officers flipped through repair manuals, and the communications officer repeated the order in a steady, practiced voice that belied his pounding heart. Below decks, in the cavernous maintenance bay, Jared Voss sat cross-legged on a raised platform of molten metal vats, the arc lamp overhead illuminating his scarred features. His cybernetic left arm, a masterpiece of gleaming titanium V-alloy, rested on a workbench strewn with flexible circuit filaments, electrolytic capacitors glowing faintly like embers. His right leg was encased in a reinforced ortho brace that hissed hydraulically whenever he moved, reminding him and anyone who cared to look that he was, in the eyes of most, damaged goods. He hummed a mechanical tune under his breath, feeling the familiar surge of adrenaline that accompanied every repair. Jared had learned long ago that machines never judged you for your scars. They responded only to precision, creativity, and the willingness to push beyond spec. It was why he'd built his own repair shop on the Obsidian Belt Station, rather than bow to corporate regulations that shunned his unorthodox augmentations. Ironically, those same augmentations made him one of the few mechanics capable of the improvisation the Astrea desperately needed if anyone would give him a chance. His comm pager crackled. "Engineering to maintenance," Captain Kor's voice said, clipped and urgent. "Got any miracle fixes down there?" Jared glanced up at the platform's edge, where the bay spilled into a corridor awash in flickering emergency lights. He wiped a smear of grease from his brow. "I've got a few ideas," he replied evenly, "but I'll need unrestricted access to the core conduit's secondary thrusters, grav plasma regulators, everything." There was a pause, and then her icy resolve broke through. "You're on. But if that core goes, we're all toast. No second chances." He didn't flinch. "Understood." Moments later, Jared hoisted himself into the zero-G access shaft that led down 100 meters of maintenance tunnels toward the heart of the ship. The walls around him hummed with the pulse of failing generators. Coolant lines rattled as compressed tachyon gas seeped past fractured seals. His mechanical arm extended a magnetic grapple, anchoring him to the nearest support strut. With careful precision, he unspooled a network of sensor probes, sending them ahead through the ducts to map out hotspots and power surges in real time. As he drifted, memories flickered behind his eyes of the accident on the Ypsilon trade route, when a malfunctioning gravity grate had sent him tumbling into the engineering pit below. 9 hours of surgery, countless rehabilitation sessions, and the grafting of the first-generation cyber limb that had saved his life. He still felt phantom pains in that hand, but he'd learned to channel the discomfort into the steady hum of servomotors. and the precise click of artificial joints. The corridor ahead bucked violently, as though the ship had sneezed. Red lights blazed in the tunnel ceiling. Jared gripped the wall as sparks showered from a ruptured conduit. He attached a portable field stabilizer, a compact sphere of his own design, to the junction box. The sparks died instantly, the lights dimmed from red to amber, and the corridor stilled. He exhaled softly, one crisis averted. He murmured, tapping a command on his wrist-mounted interface. The data mapped out a path to the reactor core chamber, but also highlighted a breach in the hull plating to decks below. Nebular gas, highly corrosive and lethal in close quarters, was pouring in, threatening to poison the coolant loops that fed the reactor coils. Jared toggled his mic. "Captain, we've got a breach in Delta 7. Gaseous intrusion is already eating through the primary coolant lines. If we don't seal it, core temperature spikes will take us down in minutes." Her voice crackled back, taut with tension. "Priority 1, repair that breach. Then I want diagnostics on the grav plasma coils, on your own timeline." "Voss, just get it done." He drifted down to the breach site, his mechanical leg brace clacking against the hull panel. There, in the dim glow of his helmet light, he saw the tier, a jagged wound in the alloy skin, edges buckled outward. Beyond it, the nebula's neon green gas hissed and fumed like a living thing. Gnawing at the interior plating, Jared knelt in mid-space, unfastened a series of modular patches from his belt, and began the delicate work of welding. His cybernetic hand steadied the microplasma torch as he fused the patch to the hull. The hiss of gas subsided as the seal formed, and he immediately routed nanobot injectors to reinforce the patch from within. As he worked, the ship shuddered again, this time more violently, as though the commissure rift itself were tugging on their hull. He pressed himself against the bulkhead, breath catching in the confines of his helmet. Every sensor around him sang alarms: structural tremors, hull stress, misaligned gravitational currents. But the patch held, the toxic gas dissipated, coolant pressure restored. Jared finished the weld, detached his torch, and flicked a switch. On his chest panel, a feed of the core chamber's readouts appeared on his visor. Temperature normalized, coolant flow steady, pressure within safe tolerances. He tapped the comm mic again. "Breach sealed and coolant loops stable. We're not melting down yet." "Excellent work," Captain Core said, her relief palpable. "Now get up to the core. We need that grav plasma coil back online pronto." Jared allowed himself a brief nod of triumph before propelling himself back into the maintenance shaft. Every twist of his bolster-sprung leg brace, every whir of his servo arm, brought him closer to the heart of the Astrea, and closer to proving that even a crippled mechanic could be the salvation of a vessel on the brink of oblivion. Above him, the rift pulsed like a hungry beast. Below him, the core hummed its wounded song. And in the space between, Jared Voss prepared to do what no one else aboard dared to attempt. Jared Voss drifted into the core chamber like a specter in half-light. The vast domed room was crisscrossed by massive cobalt blue conduits, each one pulsing with the raw power that drove the Astrea's engines and sustained its life-giving systems. Holographic gauges flickered in midair, their readouts dancing between safe thresholds and critical warnings. The tang of ozone and hot metal filled the air. With every breath, Jared tasted the tension of a ship fighting for survival. He anchored himself to a rail with a magnetic grappling hook from his cybernetic arm and surveyed the damage. The grav plasma coil's giant toroids of superconductive alloy were dancing erratically, their stabilizers overloaded and spitting radioactive particles into the chamber. Sparks arced from fractured insulation, and miasmas of ionized gas drifted in miniature tornadoes around the core. One more misfire, and the entire reactor would cascade into a meltdown, tearing the ship apart from the inside out. Analysis complete. Jared spoke to his wrist-mounted interface. A translucent display unfolded before his eyes, mapping stress, fractures, and power surges in real time. He zoomed in on the primary coil generator 7 where the thermal regulators had seized. The coil's exterior was blistered, veins of molten alloy snaking across its surface. He tapped a series of commands and ordered the auxiliary power rerouted to the magnetic containment grid. The lights dimmed in the chamber as power pulsed through the temporary circuit. Containment field at 72%, the AI annunciator announced. But the coil continued to wobble, the hum growing louder, more manic. Jared floated closer, his cyberarms integrated toolkit clicking softly as he prepped a custom damping array. "Let's calm you down," he muttered, attaching the first of 6 grav-dampening units around the coil's circumference. Each unit scavenged parts from a dozen different scrap vendors buzzed as it sensed to the coil's resonant frequency. He adjusted the spectral correlator until the readings on his visor turned from red to amber. A lurch rattled the chamber, and a spray of coolant hissed onto the floor. Jared recoiled, shielding his eyes as ultraviolet mist danced in the harsh lighting. The breach was small, just a fracture in a secondary coolant line, but in the wrong spot. It could destabilize the entire core. He extended a telescoping repair nozzle from his cybernetic arm, sealed the fracture with a quick-curing polymer, and reinforced it with micro-braided cabling. "All right," he said, stepping back. "Try that again." He re-engaged the containment field override. The coil's vibrations slowed, the hum softened, and the spectrogram on his display flattened into a steady sine wave. Green indicators blinked to life. Generator 7 functional. Containment grid stable core. Integrity 98%. Behind him, 2 engineering officers watched from a transparent observation window. Their faces, pale and drawn, flashed with relief. "By the void," one whispered. "We thought it was done for." Jared offered a curt nod. "Temporary fix. We'll need full recalibration once we clear the rift." He keyed his comm unit. "Captain, I've stabilized the grav plasma coil. Core's holding at nominal parameters. But we've got a coolant bleed in the lower manifold. Patch it yourself." He cut the mic and turned back to the machinery. The chamber lights brightened as power redistribution completed. Jared felt the ship settle, the steady rhythmic thrum of the engines. In a way, it was like the Astrea exhaling, drawing strength for what lay ahead. He climbed the maintenance ladder to the central control nexus, where banks of holo consoles displayed every subsystem, life support, environmental controls, shield harmonics, subspace coils. He paused at the shield console. A tachyonic distortion remnant of the nebulous plasma eddies was warping the energy field, threatening to bleed away shield integrity. If the shields went down, even momentarily, the cosmic winds would shred the hull in seconds. Jared accessed the external sensor array and located the worst rip in the shield matrix. Then, with deft fingers on the virtual controls, he rerouted power from the auxiliary batteries to the shield emitters, boosting frequency modulation to match the tachyon pattern. The distortion lines on the display smoothed out. The shields glowed a deeper cerulean as they hardened against the assault. "Shields repaired to 78%, he reported. "I recommend diverting another 20% from primary power to compensate for gusts." He toggled the command. On the deck plates below, the low hum intensified, energy flowing. Systems aligning. Suddenly, the overhead siren shrieked. A new alert: subspace coil instability. The Nova slip generator, critical for the upcoming slip jump, was spiking in temperature. The entire chamber shook with the coil's violent convulsions. Jared's visor blinked red. Critical overload in 10 seconds. He snapped into action, unclipping a portable coolant manifold. From his belt, he dashed across the maintenance catwalk, vaulting an exposed wire bundle. Sparks showered around him as he secured the manifold to the coil's nearest junction. Clamps tightened, hoses locked in place. He triggered the manifold's ice point coolant surge, a volatile mixture that supercooled but did not freeze. The coil hissed, steam rising, temperature dropping. Green bars crawled upward from the bottom of his readout, stabilized 60%. He cranked the flow higher. At 78%. The siren went silent, replaced by the quieting pulse of normal operations. Jared exhaled, his breath visible in the cool vapor. His vision swam for a moment. The strain of constant adrenaline, of pushing his cybernetic systems to the brink, weighed on him. He closed his eyes, grounding himself in the hum of the machinery, the steady rhythm of the reactor. Then he opened them, determination burning bright. "Subspace coils are stable," he announced over the comm. All critical systems nominal. We're ready for the Nova slip whenever you are. There was a pause, a rare moment of calm. Then Captain Kor's voice, firm but edged with gratitude. "Jared, bring us home." He strapped his magnetic grappler back to his arm, clipped away the empty manifold, and floated a step back. Through the chamber's observation window, he could see the bridge crew settling into position. The Nova slip generator already powering up. Every gauge now glowed green. Every system loaned the ship a fighting chance. Jared allowed himself the briefest flicker of pride. On any other ship, his scars and augmentations would have barred him from the core chamber altogether. But here, on the Astrea, they had gifted him the skill and fortitude to master its most dangerous heart. And as the pulsing glow from the reactor bathed his features in cobalt light, he knew he was exactly where he was meant to be, forging a new path through the abyss, one resonant spark at a time. The Astrea's deck plates vibrated beneath Jared's boots as he made his way from the core chamber to the command bridge. Each corridor was a river of humming conduits and exposed wiring, illuminated by the throbbing red glow of emergency lights. The breach in Delta 7 had been sealed, the grav plasma coils stabilized, and the subspace generator cooled, but nothing about their situation was truly safe. Until they executed the Nova slip maneuver, Jared's cybernetic heart pounded in tandem with the ship's engines. He knew the risks better than anyone. Slippage misaligned by a fraction of a percent, and the Astrea would be torn limb from limb by the Commissar Rift's tidal vortices. But he also knew the ship's only chance lay in threading that razor's edge. As he approached the armored hatch to the bridge, Lieutenant Soren drifted into view, fingers dancing across a portable console. "System status?" Jared asked, voice low so as not to alarm the rest of the bridge crew. Soren's holographic display pinwheeled data into focus. All primary thrusters at 90% output. Grav plasma coils holding at optimal resonance. Shields at full strength. Subspace. Generator is charging. We're green across the board, unless you can find something else to break. Jared cracked a rare smile. "Not today." He nodded and pushed the hatch release. It slid open with a pneumatic hiss. Inside the bridge, the atmosphere felt electric. Captain Kor stood at the center, her expression a blend of steely determination and cautious hope. The starfield stretched before them through the forward viewport, a kaleidoscope of frozen nebular mists and pinprick stars, all dragging past as though the Astrea were already slipping through some hidden current. The Commissar Rift, a yawning maw of black, loomed directly ahead. "Report," Kor said without turning, eyes locked on the Absol void. Soren leaned forward, tapping at his console. "Everything's locked and ready. Fusion cores at stable. Temperature, subspace frequency calibrated. We've got a 6-second window to engage." Jared stepped to her side. "We'll need to maintain full power for precisely 2.3 for 7 seconds after initial slip to clear the Rift's event horizon. After that, we dump 50% of the energy into shield reinforcement just in case." Kor turned to him. "Your calculations." He tapped a sequence on his wrist implant. "Verified. I've accounted for tidal shear, grav plasma drag, and coil decay patterns. It's tight, but within tolerances." A hush fell over the bridge as the crew braced for what came next. In each station, officers drummed their fingers against consoles, rewound safety latches, and exchanged final glances. The AI aura materialized as a faint blue silhouette above the tactical display. Nova slip parameters confirmed, aura chimed. "Time to slip, 60 seconds. Captain Kor inhaled deeply, then nodded. "Helm, prepare for fusion ignition. Engineering, stand by to divert power. All hands, secure your stations. Brace for slip." The officers acknowledged in unison. Jared felt the deck plates tilt as power was rerouted. Engines flared, vents hissed, and the hum of the reactor escalated to a solid roar. Through the viewport, the stars began to elongate, pinpricks of light stretching into long shafts. The rift's darkness swelled, folding around them like a physical embrace. 10, 9, 8, or his voice counted down. Jared tightened the strap on his wrist interface, watching live diagnostics scroll through his vision. He could see the grav plasma coils glowing fiercely, individual filaments of energy pulsing in ultramarini arcs. Subspace conduits ahead glowed with violet photons, ready to tear a hole in spacetime. 3, 2, 1, aura intoned. A brilliant flash of white-blue light engulfed the bridge. The ship shuddered as though passing through a colossal waterfall of energy. Panels flickered, alarms blared, and for the briefest heartbeat, every human and cyborg aboard felt as if they had unraveled at the atomic-level dot, and then silence. When the lights steadied, the Astrea was no longer in the rift's shadow. Instead, through the viewport lay the open expanse of the Cepheus Expanse, a region of space known for its tranquil grav fields and star nurseries. No longer did the void's inky fingers clutch at their hull. Instead, gentle solar winds washed over them. Cheers erupted across the bridge. Cora allowed herself a weary smile. Status. Soren's grin was almost boyish. Slip successful. All systems nominal. Shield integrity at 80% lost a little during slip initiation, but stabilizing. No structural damage detected. Jared exhaled, tension draining from his shoulders. Thrusters are firing nominally. Coils are cool. Reactor at 75%. We're good. A wave of relief swept through the bridge crew. Even Aura's holographic form seemed to breathe a sigh. Captain Core turned to Jared, her eyes shining with gratitude. I don't think I've ever seen anyone pull off something so improbable. He shrugged, modest despite the adrenaline still coursing through him. The machines never lie. You just have to listen. She nodded. Well, we're listening now. Down in the engine bays, the rigger teams cheered and slapped Jared on the back as he passed. His reputation among the crew had shifted irrevocably from the reluctant mechanic nobody wanted to the savior who tamed the heart of a dying ship. His cybernetic fingers tingled with the afterglow of exertion and triumph. But there was no time to bask. Even the Cepheus Expanse held its own perils-robed plasma swirls, dormant microquasars, and the ever-present risk of pirate ambush. Captain. Core's voice crackled in his implant. Jared, report to my ready room. Briefing in 5. He nodded to the riggers and shoved his hands into the grease-stained pockets of his coveralls. As he trudged down the corridor, the hum of the ship felt more like a living organism. Where before it had been wounded and dying, now it throbbed. With renewed vitality powered by coils he'd steadied, shields he'd mended, and engines he'd coaxed through the impossible dot in the ready room. The captain stood beside a holotable that projected a three-dimensional map of the Cepheus Expanse. Trade lanes wove through glittering star clusters. Tiny icons marked known hazards and shipping routes. We have 3 viable options, she began. Route Alpha follows the outer lane safe, but adds 6 hours to our ETA. Beta cuts through the nebula corridor faster, but risks corrosive gas pockets. Gamma is uncharted fastest, but no guarantee it's passable. Jared studied the map. The rift was behind them. Ahead lay opportunity. Beta's gas pockets aren't lethal once you adjust the shield harmonics. I can recalibrate on the fly. Core raised an eyebrow. On the fly. He shrugged. I did it with the tachyonic storms back on the Ypsilon run. Shields held at 75%. We'll lose some hull integrity if we push through unshielded, but nothing my patchwork can't handle. She let the silence hang for a beat, then met his gaze. You're sure? He nodded. I can run diagnostics in transit. Keeps us ahead of schedule. Clears us to rendezvous with the Braithwaite convoy in time to pick up our next charter. The captain's lips curved in a small, triumphant smile. Then Beta it is. As Jared powered up his wrist console to begin shield recalibration, he allowed himself to feel, for the first time in years, a genuine spark of belonging. The Astrea's hull might be scarred and patched much like himself, but together they had slipped through the abyss, and together they would navigate whatever lay beyond. The corridor lights glowed softly as Jared Voss made his way from the ready room to the observation deck. The Astrea's hum had shifted from the frantic drone of imminent disaster to a calm, steady heartbeat, proof that they had survived the commissure rift and now cruised in relative safety. Outside the panoramic viewport, the Cepheus Expanse unfolded in swirls of lavender gas and distant suns, a silent testament to new beginnings. As he entered the observation lounge, the crew engineers, navigators, and bridge officers alike fell silent, witnessing the man who had rewritten their fate. Captain Core stood by the window, her arms folded. She turned as Jared approached, her face softening. Behind her, the crew lined up in a loose semicircle, eyes shining with relief and admiration. The whispered rumors that once trailed Jared, the half-broken mechanist who tinkered with forbidden augmentations, had been replaced by one unanimous truth. He was their savior. Ladies and gentlemen, Captain Core began, her voice steady and rich with emotion. Today we owe our lives to one man, Jared Voss. Applause rippled through the lounge. Even the AI assistant aura flickered in simulated applause. Jared, cheeks flushed, bowed his head in modest acknowledgement. Prosthetic fingers tapped lightly against his thigh in nervous excitement. A young engineering cadet, face still streaked with grease and weariness, stepped forward. "Sir," he said, voice trembling, I just want to say thank you. Without you, we'd be stardust in the rift." He pressed a small data crystal into Jared's hand. "It's a blueprint I've been working on, something I think you might find useful." Jared activated his wrist implant and scanned the crystal. The blueprints unfolded in midair, designs for a modular, self-repairing field generator that could stabilize hull fractures instantly. Jared's steel arm whirred as it extended, tracing the lines of the design. "This is brilliant," he murmured. "With a few tweaks, we could integrate it into emergency seal kits across the fleet." The cadet beamed. Several crew members glanced at each other, already buzzing with ideas. Captain Core guided Jared to a high-backed chair near the viewport. "You earned a rest," she said, voice gentle. "Tell me, what's next for you?" Jared glanced at the stars, then back at the captain. In the reflection of the viewport, starlight danced across his cybernetic limbs. I think I'll stay aboard the Astrea," he said slowly. "You gave me a shot when everyone else turned me away. I'd like to repay that by keeping this ship and its people safe." Her smile was radiant. "It's settled, then. You'll be chief mechanic and head of experimental systems. You have carte blanche to innovate." Round them, crew members exchanged excited whispers. Even the veteran engineers, once wary of Jared's unconventional methods, shook his hand with newfound respect. Later that evening, Jared wandered alone onto the observation deck. The twin suns of the expanse hovered low on the horizon, casting long amber beams through the viewport. He pressed his forehead against the cool glass, breathing deeply. The stars carried silent promises of uncharted routes, exotic worlds, and challenges he had never dared to imagine. He felt the weight of his past scars, both metal and memory. But they no longer felt like burdens. They were reminders of battles fought and won, of a life reclaimed. A soft voice spoke behind him. "You did well today." Jared turned to see Aura's hologram flickering into view. "I ran diagnostics on your systems. Servomotors at peak efficiency, neural interface stable, hydraulic leg brace functioning at optimal pressure." The AI extended a glowing hand. "Commendations from the entire crew." He chuckled, touching the holographic hand as if it were solid. "Thanks, Aura. They're a good crew." A beat passed, then Jared asked quietly, "Do you ever wonder what it's like to have a body that can't be repaired?" The AI's form shimmered. "My existence is service, but I understand your meaning. You were broken once. Now you're whole in purpose." Jared nodded, glancing back at the expanse. "I used to think my place was in a back-alley workshop, hiding from regulations and corporate fleets. But out here, I've found a crew that values ingenuity over uniformity. Isn't that why we all fly the stars?" Aura offered no reply, but its soft blue glow hummed with agreement. As the suns dipped below the nebular horizon, Jared allowed himself a rare moment of peace. Tomorrow, he would redesign the hull patch drones, prototype the self-repairing field generator, and explore the uncharted lanes ahead. But tonight, he was simply the crippled mechanic who saved a ship and found a home among the stars. And in that vast, starlit silence, he understood that true strength was born not from flawlessness, but from resilience, and that sometimes the universe's greatest heroes were the ones everyone else had written off.